understanding you're the DJ in your life, you're the one who take control, you're the one who can take control. You have more options than you
Mhm.
think. And you have more power than you think you did is extremely empowering. What can I do right in this moment to help myself feel better, to help people around me feel better? Tomorrow's problem, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And I'm not gonna let myself fear for something that hasn't happened. And this is a trained mentality. Welcome to Life with Bitcoin, where we delve into the personal transformations through the lens of Bitcoin. I'm your host, Vivian. Thanks for tuning in. If you like and want to support our mission on shining light on the human side of Bitcoin, remember to like and subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, and send a few sats through the links in the description. Today, we have a special episode where the host becomes the guest. What you're about to hear is my recent appearance on the Bitcoin for Peace podcast hosted by DJ Valerie B Love, a dear friend of mine. In this episode, we'll be talking about my own transformations through Bitcoin, my life approaches, how to negotiate art wars as Bitcoin content creators, and my newest endeavors in the world of creativity. Hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I do.
Welcome to Bitcoin for Peace. I have somebody here with me who brightens my day every time I see her, and I was privileged enough to get to meet her and hug her and hang out with her in Madeira. Welcome, Vivian Cheng, the host of Life with Bitcoin podcast.
Thank you, Valerie, for the invitation. Super excited to be here.
Me too. I was so happy to get to meet you at the ladies' brunch in Madeira, and then we got to hang out a couple more times at Martel's place and throughout the event. Tell me what were you thinking? Like, what'd you think about Madeira and Bitcoin Atlantis?
Oh, wow. I loved Madeira. And then I went to Bitcoin Atlantis without knowing how to spell Madeira. I was seriously struggling. When I was trying to look for the tickets there. I was like, how to spell Madeira? And this is pretty much the level of planning I go through when I do solo travels. I'm very spontaneous. Just like always, I went to Madeira and Bitcoin Atlantis not knowing what to expect, but just know that it's going to be great. Just like all of the other Bitcoin conferences I traveled to because of the people and Bitcoin. And I've heard a lot of great things about Madeira. Some people have told me that they have heard Madeira being one of the most beautiful places in the world. So even though I heard about these things, I didn't really go with expectations, and it was great. And sometimes you go to places and you instantly vibe with it. And I thought Madeira was one of those places for me. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I could live here.
I mean, it was a really, really special place. And you're funny. I didn't know that's how you traveled. I'm really spontaneous too. I'm not like Clark Griswold, who's got everything mapped out ahead of them with their agenda. I'm like, okay, what's happening in the next couple hours? Okay, I guess I got to look and see what's going on. So it does lead for more creativity, I think, in your experience. And so that's really fun. Who did you meet there that was somebody new and interesting that you weren't maybe planning on meeting, that you got to say hi to or give a hug or interview or talk to?
I would definitely. I knew that Tip NZ was going because I saw her. I've never saw her live performance. I knew that she was performing in other Bitcoin conferences. I've watched videos of it, but I've never met her. We were probably the only two Asian Bitcoiners that were there this entire time. She was pretty much the only Asian girl that I saw. So I always wanted to meet her. I knew she was going, and it was great. We got to connect, and then thanks to you, because you were collecting people just before the live performance. So I really got to watch her playing and performing live, which is a great experience, because when you sit in the audience and her words are so punchy, her performance are so sharp, and I had goosebumps from the beginning to the end of her performance. So that was really great.
It was. I know she packs a punch, and I feel like you never know what to expect with performers and artists and creators and all of us, and she's not a big giant woman, but she's got a big giant presence when she's on stage, and the words and her delivery and the message, of course, is very, very potent and powerful. So I'm always excited and delighted, because you just never know how people are going to, surprise you. and delight you. And so, okay, so let's talk about you. I want to get to know your background. When, how did you get into Bitcoin, and why, like, why is Bitcoin so important to you, and why did you start with a Life with Bitcoin podcast?
I was born and raised in Beijing and went to started just went on was my life when I was 18 years old. So ever since, so basically my entire adulthood, I've been out and about by myself, which is a great privilege. And when you had so much independence just by yourself and you have to figure things out on the go, then you really acquire a different perspective in life of how do I navigate through life, because there's no one there to help you. So I really appreciate their respect and understanding and support of me choosing a life path of my own. So for that, I'm absolutely grateful, because think about, in my parents' shoes, to send their only daughter to across the world when she's 18 years old and none of my parents speak any English. This sounds very scary as a parent, and in a way I
Yeah,
wouldn't want to be my parent, just knowing the adventure and all of the places I've been to. So I have very deep love and appreciation for what they've done for me.
right.
And I got lucky in the sense that most people, they become a Bitcoiner first, and then they want to leave the fiat world. They want to come on the Bitcoin standard and work in the Bitcoin standard. And I was the other way around. So I got a Bitcoin job first. It was during COVID. I was doing my master's at the time. Because of the pandemic, there was really nothing else to do, and everybody's just during lockdown. So besides the study I had, I was doing freelance work on the side so that I can keep myself occupied. And I
Mhm.
got hired by a Bitcoin company, and we were doing part time together. And because I'm in the line of marketing and PR, then I really need to understand what I'm saying to do a good job. So it was a steep learning curve of understanding what is Bitcoin, what does it do, and what does it mean. And then I slowly became a Bitcoiner in that process of learning about Bitcoin. And then from that point, there's really no going back.
There's no going back. And I mean, you obviously have a very different worldview than somebody like me who grew up here in the United States. And so, what has shifted for you growing up in China and in Beijing, compared to, like that world, then now understanding what Bitcoin can offer the world and for your future?
Right. So I grew up, I would identify myself as a freedom maximalist. And I
Yeah.
remember growing up, I belong to the one child generation. So I'm the only child in the family. And I remember growing up, I would avoid news. So for years and years, I avoided news. It was because I recognize how privileged I am as the single child, and I have all the love and support from my family. But at the same time, you watch news, and there are people from less fortunate places. They're struggling in the sense that there might be having a war in their country. They might not
Mhm.
have electricity. They may have not clean water. And I think about these things and thought to myself, what is the difference between me and those kids? There's really not much. And the only thing that was different is because I won the genetic lottery per se.
Mhm.
And it made me incredibly guilty. So to
Mhm.
basically avoid that guilt, for years I wasn't really tuning into reality. I was very into my own world, into art and things that I enjoyed, and have my own little world, and hide, had a little bit of a hideout there. This was changed after Bitcoin. It gave me so much sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It feels so rewarding that to know that I'm making a difference, to share with people that they do have a choice. They don't have to just suck it up, and they don't just have to comply with whatever's in front of them. And oftentimes the option is not so great. So the line of work I do in marketing communications with Bitcoin companies, as well as the podcast Live with Bitcoin, is to really hope to inform people, and share with them that there is an option for you to pursue freedom.
So let's talk about being a creative and PR and marketing and, getting different types of messages out for different groups, right? How did you get into PR and marketing and social media and helping people with that?
For sure. So I think that really goes back to when I was in university, and then you have to choose a major, right? And it's kind of cruel
Mhm.
for a teenager at such a young age to try to figure out, to remotely know what they're going to do for the rest of their lives and pick a
Right.
profession there. I went to business school, and I had multiple options at the time, and I knew myself enough at the time to know I don't want to work on the same thing day after day for the rest of my life. Like, that was the bottom line. So
Yeah.
right off the bat, and then I'm not a numbers person. I just really struggled for some of the number driven classes that I had. I
Mhm.
didn't grow up loving math, so pretty much right off the bat, things like finance and accounting just didn't work my way. And then
Mhm.
the thing that were interesting to me at the time was things like marketing and HR. And I love psychology. I grew up loving psychology. I read some books about. I love history. I love sociology. I'm curious about people in general,
Yeah.
um, and I love observing them in a way. Like, I love people watching. I love trying to figure out what people were saying and kind of orchestra a little drama in my head as I'm watching people speak, maybe like 5 meters from me, and imagine what their circumstances would be and what brought them here in this very moment. And these things I think about all the time. So I thought things like marketing would really make sense. And
Yeah.
marketing and communication seem to be something that's more project based, meaning that you work on projects and then you move on and then you on to the next one. So for me, this project based nature really draws me in, and the fact it's people driven, and I love people. I love learning about them. I love questioning them. The very meaning and essence around humanity are absolutely my favorite subjects. So I
Yeah.
guess that's why I started doing what I did. And then later on, uh, I knew that I want to be in this profession. And then when I chose a major for my master's, I thought I wanted something that's a slightly different, but also close enough. So I chose communications because it's also very people driven, very relationship driven. Um, and it was during the program that I stumbled upon Bitcoin. And to be honest, ever since, the degrees haven't really helped me in any way, just because we're in the proof of work space, which is for the better.
Yeah, it's so fun. I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna ask you, knowing what you know now about Bitcoin and the world and how you've been out in it, um, do you feel like it's, and I'm not discouraging people going to higher education and learning. I think it's a rite of passage sometimes for people, even if whatever the degree is that you get isn't necessarily what you're doing every single day. It does shape you as a human. You get to be around people who are learning. Do you feel like, would you do it again? Would you go try to do it, like invest in a master's, or would you just go straight out into the workforce and go, start putting paint on the wall, as they say?
Right. I think there are two layers of this question. The first layer is that, have I learned anything in these programs? I would say I have definitely learned something, but it's
Mhm.
not, I would say the amount of things I learned in college didn't worthwhile of the type the money and then the time effort I put
Right.
into.
Right.
However, for me it's a little bit different because I'm from China, and what I did is basically I used education as an excuse to really help me go elsewhere. I went to Vancouver for my university, and if it wasn't for going for higher education, I would never had the opportunity to leave.
Got
And
it.
I went to London in the UK for my master's. It was during COVID, so I didn't get as much as I could out of it as I could, but um, I used that as an excuse to go live in a year in the UK. And it's kind of the same thing when I go to Bitcoin conferences these days. Like, I go to these Bitcoin conferences, and a huge motivation behind it is actually to go explore wherever the Bitcoin conference is happening. Like, I went to last year. I went to BTC Amsterdam in Amsterdam, and it was a
Uh-huh.
2-day conference. And then I ended up staying in Europe for 6 weeks, just just because I know that I'm going to the Bitcoin conference. I'm there to work, and then I made plans, and then I was like, okay, I'm there. I may as well staying some more time and do something because I'm already there. And then I ended up staying 6 weeks there. I would say for higher education, knowing what I know, for me, I would probably have done it again, but with a different perspective. Just because personally, it was the holy grail for me to go elsewhere. It was basically the only excuse I had that can be allowed at such a young age to go out in the world, experience things, and find a life path of my own. And I did learn a lot of things through things that are outside of the classroom,
Yeah.
just by being exposed of amazing people, inspiring conversations, and then just to have the mere freedom to fail and then to learn.
Mhm.
When you're just by yourself and not under the wings of your parents, I think that's tremendously valuable. And the sooner you start doing that, of course, like safety first, and you always have to protect yourself. But
Mhm.
I have been super, super grateful for the opportunity and the fact that I did receive my parents' support for me to do this, because otherwise I would never have the opportunity to leave in the first place.
That's such a interesting perspective. I love it. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, yes, go take that leap. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, if it's just for a job, I can't go. Or obviously in different countries, it's not as easy to leave. And so I love that perspective, Vivian. So let's talk about being a creator. We were talking about, um, valuing your worth. And, I think you made a really interesting point, because obviously I think there's a lot of us who operate really well in numbers and left brain type side of stuff. And there's other people who operate really well with more human people, soft skills. Um, for some reason, because you can put a number and do a calculation on something, it seems like people who are in that field have an easier time saying, this is what my worth is and pay me, versus other people who are doing more soft skills, whether it's communication, whether it's healing, whether it's psychology, um, whether it's being a creator, an artist, a singer, podcaster, it doesn't matter. It seems like there's a disconnect with the, how we get compensated and how we can monetize and value and put a true number on our worth, so that we don't have to, work 5 jobs and everything. So how do you navigate that? How do you negotiate your worth, and how do how would you talk to other folks around, how to address that?
Right. I guess for the record, the first thing I would say is that I'm not an expert in that, and this is something that, because I'm a fairly new creator. I've only been doing podcasting since last June, and I don't have a sponsor yet. So if anyone's interested, hit me up. But
Oh, man.
it's so I'm still in that process. But I do think there's a thing or two I would add just from working with creators in the space and having creator friends. And this is a conversation we constantly have, and well, we had this conversation as well of how do we
Mhm.
as creators understand our self-worth, and then to make sure that other people recognize that too, so that we don't struggle as creators. I think I learned something when I started hiring for my team.
Mhm.
So is the power of simply turning the table. So when I first graduated from university, there's the prolonged process of job hunting, right? That you have to do the cover letters for every company. You have to customize your resume. You have to jump on calls with people and do interviews. Um, and then when I started hiring for my own team, I simply realized just by turning the table, it clears out so much of your perspective almost instantly, because now you're on the other side of the table. You're the employer instead of the employee. And then you would go on these interviews and ask these questions knowing exactly what you're looking for. Now when I go on interviews, I know I can have a guess, I can have an educated guess of the underlining thing that the employer is trying to learn about. So I think in
Mhm.
this case, for creators, it is important to, I guess, have a thought experiment of when we negotiate our rates, when we get on the phone with potential clients, think about this whole thing from their perspective. Think
Yeah.
about what are they looking for? What are they trying to achieve? What are their objectives? Who are they trying to appeal? What is the core messaging? how can I add value, and why we're in this conversation in the first place. That, there must be some previous coordination to lead to us having this conversation. So why they've they have been entertained enough to have this call with me, and
Yeah.
where do they see me potentially adding value, and where I can add value where they don't know. So those are the things I should tell them. So I think by understanding what their perspective can really help our negotiation power, I guess, in that sense, because
Mhm.
we can assume they know what we know, and it's guaranteed it's not true. Like, they don't know what we know, and this is why we need to work together, right?
Right.
So I think to understand their needs, it's the number one thing that we can have a collaborative approach while have a win-win situation, both for the clients and for the content creators. And then the other thing I would say is to really understand your added value. And this is something that I am also trying to figure out as a creator, is that where exactly am I adding value? And then the third thing I would say is that we're not only negotiating with clients, we're also communicating with our audiences,
Yeah.
for the people who are actually consuming the content. And sometimes, I'm sure you can relate to this idea where sometimes, like, some people send you a reply and then they said, "Oh, great episode, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned XYZ," and it really makes your day. And I feel this constantly as a content creator. And my podcast is on Fountain, and sometimes people would send stream sats, and some people would have comments. And I really appreciate when people reach out, and sometimes even they reach out and DM me and share their feedback of the content, and share that, "Oh, you can have this person on because that would be interesting." And I very much appreciate when I get to have that direct communication with my audience. And I think it is a process for creators to work with their audiences as well, to understand what works for them and what not, and what are the things that they hope to see more, to have that ongoing dialogue with both the clients and the audience, to for us creators to better understand our self-worth, understand what are some of the untapped potential.
I love that, and of course, all of us love to get, like, a high five or something that's, like, validating what we're up to. How far do you this is obviously an ethical question, from being a creator. So there's a lot of people out there who, there's a lot of debates out there going on right now in the ordinals and the NFT space and all of this, um, other avenues of how to use, Bitcoin and how to earn a living as a creator, right? And so there's certainly, you can look at it as, I'm just going to stick to my art. I'm doing my thing. Don't, thank you for your comments, but this is me, this is me, this is me. And you just know yourself so deeply as an artist and as a person. And so you'll appreciate the externalities, but you don't let them totally shift your essence, right? And so, so that's one layer from the creative perspective. And then so some people I'm seeing just going, well, whatever the market wants, I'll just do, and I'm gonna just kind of go along with whatever they say. And to me, I'm just like, that seems like you're being, somebody could get pulled around and not necessarily be that authentic to their art and to their craft. And so, have you found yourself in positions, from your own creativity, not when you're hired for a client to go say, here, I got to go do a campaign, but when you're working on Life with Bitcoin, like, do you feel like you can stay true to yourself, even though you're getting different types of feedback?
For now, 100%. Well, partially because I don't have a sponsor just yet, and
Right.
the essence of the show is also very different, in the sense that I talk about very personal topics with my guests.
Yeah.
I talk about the personal transformations through the lens of Bitcoin. So, what is life before and after Bitcoin? How have their
Mhm.
beliefs and values shifted because of it? Um,
Yeah.
like art, life, circumstances, philosophy, truth, God, like all of these topics that are more human they're not necessarily
Right.
like, and I have to make conscious decisions of who do I bring on the show. And I get approached these days from companies and say, hey, we want to have our founder or CEO come on the show and talk about this project and that project. And oftentimes I have to say no, or I have to say that or I tell them that it's the focus here is really the person. So if you can share with me some angles of where can I learn about this interesting person so I can come up with killer questions, then send my way. And I would love to dig into these materials and see if I can make it interesting. But
Mhm.
otherwise, the center of focus is really not about promoting certain company or certain initiatives,
Right.
unless there's a significant kind of angle on their personal mission. So there's a line somewhere, and is oftentimes a fine line, and that I have to make conscious decision.
Yeah, you and I have very similar takes on, obviously, we're more of the people side. I'm not really, I don't know what the price is. I don't know. It's not fine. There's 10,000 other wonderful humans talking about that. I want to talk about the humans in Bitcoin and how our missions different, whether we're creators, whether we are the analysts, whether we're hedge fund people, whether we're event coordinators, whatever we are in Bitcoin, like how is it moving the needle forward to make a more peaceful planet for everybody, including the planet itself? So it's, how is Bitcoin helping, with emissions? How is Bitcoin helping, clean up things and electrify villages that didn't have electricity previously? How is Bitcoin helping people get out of violent situations domestically or with their authoritarian governments? And so to me, those are very important topics. And I love that your show covers that and my show covers that. If I could do 5 episodes a day, I would. I would love to do a daily show. I want to be the Oprah of Bitcoin. I would love to have a 5-day-a-week show and just talk to people from all over the world and share their stories, and share their transformation. And so um, it's great that you talk about before and after Bitcoin. And I'm working on, for Bitcoin for Peace, we're going to be putting together kind of like a chicken soup for the soul series with before and after stories for people of anything. How has it changed your relationship? How has it changed your health? How has it changed your financial status, your outlook on life? Are you suicidal anymore where you once were? Are you getting beaten up anymore where you weren't? So lots of ways that I think we need to understand why sound money, it can cause more inner and world peace. And so I'm excited to work with you on that and have your stories and everybody else's stories come forward. It's very, very, that's how we learn, right? We learn by sharing stories. Yes, we learn by some graphs and data, and that's awesome. But we also learn by the truth when people come together and share and are
Yeah.
honest and vulnerable and authentic. And so I love what you're doing, and I want to see lots more of Vivian's work out there. Let's talk. Are we allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I learned something about you in Madeira, and I was so excited and delighted to hear your voice in song. You are a gorgeous singer. I love what you're doing and the music that you're creating. And let's talk about you as this part of your craft is coming forward in your life.
All right. Well, this is a super new territory for me too. And funny enough, this
Mm.
entire like I went to Madeira, and then I think I must have caught a bug in on the plane because there were people coughing, and I was like, oh shoot, please don't let this happen. But it did happen. Like I pretty much lost my voice this entire conference. So I went on my panel, and then Samson, he was on my panel, and he's like, "What happened to your voice? You don't sound yourself." I was like, I feel possessed." So I managed to do the panel, but it didn't end up to be my voice. So everybody that I've met during the conference, you haven't heard my real voice, and this is sort of my real voice. And I do sing, and growing up, like I love singing. Um, I love music. I grew up playing started off playing keyboard as a kid, and then I transitioned to piano, but for the longest time I have been a crappy instrument player. I'm not any good. It's just a hobby. I'm just a hobbyist, but I really love to sing. And then I during my Europe trip last year in Amsterdam, I kept getting signs for just signs from people that I meet randomly or just on the street or just random conversations I have with people that been saying to me that I should get into create I should tap into my creative side more. So I took on that
Mm,
initiative, and then I spent some time in Berlin and I wrote a little thing, um, that I later on wanted to develop into a lyrics. And then one day in, I guess, November, I saw an ad on my Instagram. It's a songwriting app. So I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I'm gonna download and play around. And then it just took off in the sense that it worked really well in my style, and then it's really fluid. And then I basically started to use this app to create little demos that are relatively produced, and record my voice on top of it and start thinking about, okay, so what can I do with it. And then last summer I also met someone, later on became a bandmate to, and then he was like, okay, let's get them produced, and he really loved these songs as well, so he was like, okay, let's do it, let's make it a project. So the announcement here, I guess, a little bit, is that we're looking to release an EP this year, hopefully this year. That's the timeline we're working on as a duo. So I will be tapping into my creative side as a musician going forward. I'm really, really excited. And I do feel extremely privileged these days because we all kind of create playlists when we go travel to remember
mhm.
places. And now I get to write songs about these places that record these exclusive memory of mine, and hopefully to inspire people that have traveled to the same place to remind them of the vibe of the place. That's what I really want to do as well.
I love that. It's just funny. When I used to DJ, I didn't do this to every single place, but many of the places I would make, and I'm all about all sorts of types of personal expression, but I called them sexual journeys, and so I would make all these playlists for different, like mixed sets for different locations because they have different vibes, like you
Mm.
said, and very different vibes, And I think music is like uh, it's a color, and it colors like your experience. It's obviously a vibe, and so set and setting. Let's talk a little bit about the mood of your music and the vibe of your music, because when I heard it, I was because you are such a bubbly, bright person, when I heard your music, I was like, wow, okay, let's talk. It's very deep and emotional, and it definitely I compared you to, like, an Adele who, wants to when you hear some of her music, you just know, like, this is medicine, and it's gonna make me feel some feelings, and some of these feelings are gonna, hopefully be cathartic, and so your music feels very cathartic to me, Vivian.
I don't even know that word. What
Cathartic
is
is like a
cathartic?
transformational, like a butterfly comes from a caterpillar to, you're going from one form to another. And so I feel like the healing qualities of your music are coming through because I think you're accessing emotions where you're giving people that permission to feel a certain like thing that maybe they're not going to go show in public, and it's more of a private experience. You want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is exactly because that I'm a bubbly person and really positive
Hmm.
in general, that I do feel like I have a lot of the melancholy quality just in my
Hmm.
personal life, and I love sad songs. And if you like go through my playlist, they're all like very sappy, and I love heartbreaks. It's almost like I draw energy from heartbreaks and from some of the painful experiences from trauma, because those are the things that really helps me understand who I am throughout
Yeah.
years of time. Um, just like a lot of other people, I've had rather a challenging year last year, and I think there were very few places that I was allowed to be vulnerable. And music is one of the few places that I had one of the few places that allow me to just be 100% vulnerable, to be very, very honest with the puzzles that I have been dealing with for that period of time. Um, and I love how fluid this format is. You don't have a lot of space to write, to mumble. So you really have to be precise and brief of your struggles. And maybe you have picked that up in the songs, that I love asking questions in the songs. There are tons of questions I asked both the listeners and myself, and these are the things I constantly think about all the time. And I seem to have this duality in me, not only in my music, but there's so many different aspects where, because I grew up in the East culture, and then as soon as I hit adulthood, I moved away, and then I've been living in Europe and North America since. So I oftentimes feel this conflict between different mindsets, different
Mm,
lifestyle. I see different people approach life with very different approaches, that are completely the opposite. And sometimes I find myself hard to decide where I stand and have form an opinion, because I'm a fairly empathetic person, and I get to see the arguments on both sides with my own eyes, and I get to experience it. So
mhm.
sometimes on I can be on both sides, on the deep end of both sides of the same scale at the same time. And that's extremely confusing sometimes. Confuses myself for sure. And I guess music is somewhere where I get to communicate these confusions and
Mhm.
communicate my vulnerability, which is really a superpower if you think about it.
It
And
is.
I have made a decision to be as honest as I can. And I'm not someone who's afraid of letting people know who I am. And I want to include people who recognize that and appreciate that in my life. And if I have to suffer some loss or forego some relationships because I chose to approach life this way, then I will have to make my peace, right? So I hope I'm a little bit nervous to have these songs come out eventually, because in these songs they're extremely personal. Like those are extremely personal thoughts, um, the questions I struggle with, and those are my own limitations as well. But I guess it's good to be vulnerable. And I really do hope that these songs will have the healing energy that you shared, so that when people listen to them, there's going to be a sense of, at least they get a good cry out of it, and that's going to be mission accomplished.
It is, and it's so important to give ourselves that permission to let these emotions out, otherwise they can come out sideways in the form of anger, violence, addiction, all of these things that, are byproducts of us not giving ourselves permission to feel, and certainly not feeling comfortable enough to share it with others, because we have the illusion, the story, the lie, the myth that everyone else has it together and we're the ones who are, kind of messed up over here. And the truth is everyone's equally fucked up, and everyone's equally fucked up in their own unique way. And once they get over being fucked up, they're going to be fucked up in another way. And so there's never any like, I've got it together. It's like, nope, here's your next dojo level of challenges as a human on your evolution path, walking this little earth rock. And so I think any of us who think like that's never going to happen again, or I'm cured forever. No, you're not. You got a whole nother curriculum that's going to show up in your life at any stage, and we think like, when this happens, I'm going to be all good. Yes, you will, but now you're going to have to go up this other mountain, and you get to go
That's called
experience that
being
part of yourself.
original.
Yeah.
That's called being original, which is what I love. And it's been incredible to have the opportunity to document these processes, and
Yeah.
to document these struggles, because now when you write a song and then you listen to it after some time, after it's you're not in that stage anymore, it really gives you a lot more perspective of, oh, wow. And it sometimes it makes you want to give yourself a hug, like the past self a hug. So
Mm.
it's something that helps me travel through time and travel through different stages and travel through different challenges, and really have me appreciate time in general, and appreciate how myself have handled it and how everybody has helped me along the way.
I love hearing that. when you said travel through time, like, you think about, obviously we get to enjoy each other in this podcast, and most people who are going to listen to it, including us, probably will only listen to it once. And that's enough, right? It's a conversation. It's not like something we're going to go back and play, repeat, repeat, repeat. Let's listen to the podcast 50 times and get a good cry. That's not happening with this medium, right? And so music
Right.
is this time machine, and it's a medical, I always say music is the medicine and the DJ is the doctor, and that everybody is the DJ of their own lives, right? And so you get to kind of decide, like, I need some energy today. I'm going to go play some Beastie Boys, Fight for Your Right or whatever, or I need to go cry. I'm going to listen to Vivian's music, and so, and you can do that on repeat again and again and again to kind of hack your way into an emotional expression. Again, whether it's a sad thing, whether you need to get on stage and be powerful, whether you need to be calm because you're about to have a really challenging conversation. So I feel like music is such it never gets old. It's a timeless thing that we can continue to pull from in our treasure chest of tools for our lives, right?
I'm working on unlocking a new identity of myself. Like, this is something I'm really obsessed with as a person, is that
Cool.
I'm onto a lifetime of experience, and this is what I'm going after in life. And I love this opportunity to be alive, and I'm really grateful for it. And I'm in this constant pursuit of what else I can do, what else I can do, what else am I, and to kind of be interacting with the external world constantly and find out about myself. So the self exploration aspect is really important for
Yeah.
me as a person. And I grew up loving music. I grew up playing music just as a crappy instrument player. But I've sang on stage, but I've always thought, oh, I wish someday I could get to be in a band. Like, this is something that appeared in my mind from time to
Mhm.
time as a kid, and still till this day. Um, and I think it's about how do we make things happen for ourselves as individuals. And
Mhm.
the entire journey so far, even though it hasn't been too long, has really given me a lot of strengths and a lot of reassurance that I can take small steps towards what I really want to achieve in life. I can make wishes, I can send orders to the universe, and then the universe will listen, and then will help
Yeah.
me to help give little nudges and help me, give me tricks and tips, and send me the right type of people that can be my partners in this journey and be my audience, um, and be my friends, to be there for me and to encourage me, to send me feedbacks. I think oftentimes I've really learned the power of be audacious in the past few years. It's the
Mhm.
to dare to ask, dare to
Yep.
act on something. And I used to be someone who's constantly waiting. Like, I maybe this changed after I left home, but I grew up as a person who's relatively shy. Like, I would have something that I want, um, but I would secretly hope this thing happened to me, but never act on it. I think if it's meant to be happening, then it would happen automatically. But this is not the truth. If you want something, then you have to discipline yourself, and you have to exercise courage to go after it, and
Yeah.
recognize the fact that you're not going to get it right away, because that's not how life works. And it shouldn't be, because all of the things worth working for, it's not going to come right away. And you have to develop, or I have to, in this case, have to develop this discipline and the consistency and focus, and ask myself, do I really want it? How much do I want it? Because if I want
Mhm.
it, I'll have to work for it. It's the very idea of being value proof of work, and discipline yourself through proof of work, and also
Yeah.
have low time preference. So you have to focus to be hardworking and to be consistent. And if you are willing to do that, put in a lot of work without seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for a long time, then that's an indicator of how much you want it. And I've learned that if I work on small steps at my own pace, like, I'm not in a rush to get anywhere, but rather to enjoy the journey and really take baby steps towards these things I want to do in life, then I like to think that there's nothing can stop me. And I like to be blindly confident and trust my own ability to really enjoy the journey. But in terms of if I really make it in the end, it's not as important for me because I know that I'm taking all the steps I can. I know I'm having fun every steps I take. I know I'm acquiring lifetime friends, so many great conversations, and the experience I've cherished for a lifetime throughout this process. And in the end, that's what matters, is about the journey and not the destination.
It is. It's so true, and I'm a sailor, and we always joke about, like, speedboat people versus sailors. It's just kind of like speedboat people are in a hurry to get where they're going. Sailors are like, "Yeah, we're just enjoying the ride." I wanna circle back really quick. I love exactly everything you said about proof of work, and so we also have proof of faith, right? And you had said earlier about, putting an order into the universe, and it happens. And so there's a blend of that, right? There's a blend of proof of work and proof of faith because sometimes,
Yeah.
what you think the order is going to be turns out to be just a little bit different, you know, but it's something that maybe was in your, I call it your spiritual curriculum, right? Like you're here to learn all of these different types of things. And so, um, how do you how do you mentally navigate around the disappointments or when, you place an order for, a cheese pizza and it comes back as a taco? It's still food, but it's not your cheese pizza.
I just don't expect anything. I expect very little from things in general, from people, from the circumstances I'm into. I have once just been described as an inexcitable person because nothing seemed to be able to excite me, and this is because I'm extremely spontaneous. And then what happens if you take such spontaneous approach in many of your days is that when anything can happen, nothing can surprise you. So you just have to deal with things and be there as is. You cannot have, so I don't really expect much. And in a way it's a little bit sad because it's like you can't trust, right? You can't trust and you have to be in the moment all the time, and this can be exhausting. But I find it work for me because I don't expect to, for the very reason to avoid disappointment. And if your expectation level is so low, um and then the day end up to be, or the situation end up to be just slightly better, then you feel like you're gaining, you're getting rewarded from the universe. So there's so many things in life, career wise and content wise and life wise, it's very much, and relationship wise too, is really about expectation management. If your expectation is like, really high up here, then there's a very high chance you are going to get disappointed. I do believe like this world is all about perception, and this world is our reality. We get to choose our own reality, and I live in the realities that I construct, and I don't allow much negativity in that space. So that's, I guess,
Yeah.
one aspect. And then the other
Yeah.
aspect to deal with disappointments or just things don't go your way, it's to be more spontaneous. It means I'm quick to pivot. If this doesn't work to my advantage, first, I never think that. I think everything that happens, there is a way um, to make it good for me. It depends on
Yeah.
how I deal with it. So I
Yes.
really train myself to think that and to act on this very base principle. That pure pure positivity is very very important, especially if you're in a bad place in life. Because like I said this the other day, and I was saying how we need to show up for ourselves before anybody else does, and continue to do so when the party is over. And this requires looking within, like looking within, looking into ourselves and understanding who we are, and have a strong sense of self-awareness and understanding where we are going and what we're trying to achieve, because it's very hard to tell what are noises and what are signals in life. And you
Yeah.
have to have the pole stand somewhere to draw, to have a reference point and understanding what's everything in relation to that you, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things I try to do when things don't really go my way. And you're absolutely right, it's a blend of proof of faith and proof of work, because if you just do wishful thinking and daydream, then it's very likely you're not going to get very far.
No. And like you said, if you're all you're doing is hustle and you don't keep that perspective of like, okay, this didn't go my way, something else is going to be better, you're just going to get disappointed because you're going to fail constantly, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter. You're always going to have something that doesn't work out your way. I always talk about, with people that I work with, about having like a mixing board, like a DJ mixing board, and you have all these volumes and channels, right? And so it's like, who's got the volume up in your head? Is it your
Right.
confidence? Is it your parents? Is it a trauma? Is it an old pattern? And if you have that self-awareness to understand, like, yes, I'm the DJ and I'm in charge of what the volumes are and who I'm going to listen to, then you get to be powerful. But if you're just sitting there and you're letting old things just start to just create the signal of cacophony, yuckiness in your head, that's noise. That's not actually truth, and your truth does come from that's inward, quiet
Exactly.
place.
You're
Right.
absolutely right that understanding you're the DJ in your life, you're the one who take control, you're the one who can take control. You have more options than you
Mhm.
think, and you have more
Yeah.
power than you think you did is extremely empowering. And I constantly remind myself about this too. What can I do right in this moment to help myself feel better, to help people around me feel better? I rarely think about, this is for personally, I rarely think about tomorrow's problems. I think tomorrow's problem, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And I'm not going to let myself fear for something that hasn't happened. And this is a trained mentality because I grew up to be a worrying kid, worrying
Mhm.
about just high strong in general, and worry about how the worst case can possibly happen. And this allowed me to be extremely present. I have this very interesting relationship with time. I think I'm someone who can, or who has the ability, a little bit of the ability to live the past, the present, and the future at the same time, at any given
Hmm.
moment. And what does it mean is that I think being present is fairly straightforward. You're there, you're tapping into your emotions, and you're not overthinking things when it happens, and you're willing to jump into situations, which is not always for the better, but I accept it. And then to live in any given moment from the past is, I recognize how far I've come as that person that I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I recognize how far I've came
Yeah.
forward, how far I've evolved as a person, and I'm deeply grateful for the journey I've had. And I think about this moment from the old self's shoes and think, wow, holy shit, like I didn't know I would become her. And that's great because that's, something beyond my imagination. I didn't think that was an option, and that's great. And I have to cherish this moment as much as I can. And then from the future's perspective, it's like this present moment will eventually become a distant memory. I know the briefness of each moment, and it's almost like I'm looking
Mhm.
back at this moment from my future self, thinking, what can I do to benefit my future self or make this a even better memory in the moment when I still have the opportunity to change things, to change to construct reality for my future self. So I kind of have this
Yeah.
weird awareness going on in the back of my head subconsciously to meddle in the situation, to engage in the situation in a way that have the triology of perspectives.
Be Here Now from Ram Dass, who is my like first spiritual teacher, but he talks about remember, be here now. And it's exactly that, right? A lot of times we find ourselves tripping about something we can't control in the future, or something that happened in the past. And it's just like, you can rewrite history by changing the way that you
Yeah.
perceive it. Like, you can look back at something that happened in your life and say, wow, I'm a victim, poor me, or la, 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 whatever. Or you can say, oh, I was supposed to get this lesson because if I didn't, then I wouldn't have had all these other wonderful things in my life. And so the minute you decide to look this way or have a different narrative around an experience, you get to rewrite your life, And I love that you were saying, about thinking about your future self and how would your future self look back on this moment and how could you make this moment even more robust and interesting, juicy, meaningful, and I love this perspective. You're so young and so wise. You've got such a beautiful soul. I'm so happy to know you. I want to just, I know we got to wrap up here in a minute. What, the title that we created for this episode was just how to negotiate your worth as a Bitcoin creator or any creator for that matter, right? Obviously, when we live in different parts of the world, we have different like rates that we might, feel confident asking for, and I'm a total independent creator and I've worked with different, folks around the world because my budget is very low for what I do. So I've gotten to work with, folks from the Philippines, people from El Salvador who the wages that I would pay them are very fair and they're happy with that. But if I were to offer somebody in the States or the UK, that would be an insult. And so how do we as independent creators wherever we are say this is what I think I'm worth and then not constantly compromise and cut our rates short just so that we can get
Right. I
work.
think one thing I would say about this is to work on your irreplaceability. Is that a word? Irreplaceability.
Yeah.
And this is through
Yep.
authenticity. This is through showing people who you are as a person. Because oftentimes we work with people, of course, because of their professional skills, of course, because of the work they produce, and but oftentimes we work
Mhm.
with them because of who they are, because of we recognize and we appreciate them as a person, and then we love working with them. And especially in the remote setting, because we're in Bitcoin, everybody's remote, everybody's nomadic, and the soft skills when it comes to communications, when it comes to having being
Mhm.
a reliable teammate, team player, it's so important. And if you can
Mhm.
demonstrate these values and demonstrate who you are and be that irreplaceable person for them, and have that shine through
Yeah.
your content, and this is something, and be able to say this, I create something that nobody else can. And from the audience perspective, if you find a content creator that resonate with you, be vocal about it. Share like comments, repost, and send them some stats, and make sure that they know you love their content. And this, I know how this can make a content creator's day, just to read one comment that warms their heart. And then for the client's perspective, I think it's a face thing, because well, first, we're in the Bitcoin space, which means
Mhm.
there's a seasonality to it. There's the natural bull and bear market, and it's the same thing for all industries, that when the economy is bad, so when it's a bear market, then something like marketing and communications are typically something that's first get cut budget into,
Mhm.
which is a little bit sad, but this is sadly the truth for now.
Yeah.
And then in bull markets is a little bit better. And then because we're the Bitcoin companies are still in very much of a startup mode. So they
Yeah.
are very strategic, and they're very cautious with where they're spending money. So I believe when we move along the curve of Bitcoin adoption, and when there's more Bitcoin companies are doing well, then there's going to be a natural shift in how they would approach content creation, how they would approach content creators, and be able to pay them very fairly, because oftentimes it's not in their wish to to really cheap out on content either. But I would also encourage clients, companies in the space, to really value the power of content, because how else we're gonna share our collective mission, how else we're gonna onboard more people onto the Bitcoin standard? It is through content, and it is through different angles of content. It is through different formats of content. And even though it's not something that's like revenue driven right away, but we as Bitcoiners, we're not necessarily in it for just the money. We're
Yeah.
here for cause. We're here for liberating more people in this world, and
Yep.
having more options, and be just better individuals through the power of Bitcoin. So there's so much more to it. And I do want to encourage Bitcoin companies out there, be more generous and be more fair with content creators, to really nature our ecosystem, and that's going to be beneficial for everyone. Because these content creators, like I have many content creator friends, and they go through extreme effort to
Yeah.
produce these content, and they take personal risks all the time in different places, and they have near death experiences in the process of creating content. That's super admirable. And you don't want these people to feel neglected,
Yeah.
because these are the front we're the front soldiers of helping people onto the Bitcoin standard. And
We
um
are. Yeah, that's such a
yeah.
great way to put it. And for those of us, I'm so sad to hear that people have almost died creating content, and I know this from other situations. So when we were in Madeira, a bunch of us were all talking and trying to realize, we all realized like we need to come together as creators and learn from each other and do hands-on learning. And a lot of the platforms and tools and protocols out there, we still don't know what the heck is going on. And because everything's going so quickly, and the evolution of how to become a content creator, whether you're independent or whether you're working for an organization, um, what's happening with AI, what's happening with value for value, what's happening with subscriptions, what's happening with, anything that's going to involve, growing your audience, how to do more one-on-one engagement, what's the right uh, rhythm of production for your material, how do you grow and nurture your own unique audiences. And so we decided, a bunch of us were like, let's do a creator summit, kind of like Tony Robbins, and we'll have a bunch of us do panels. We'll talk, obviously you were there in this all these conversations and discussing like how can we come together all over the world. And it's going to be a virtual creator summit that we're putting together. And the idea is for different creators, whether you're a podcaster, a writer, a filmmaker, a course creator, um, a book writer, anything. How do we come together with the tools, with the platforms, and then practice and touch and share about, how to negotiate a contract, how to, handle rejection, and not just the nuts and bolts of creating content and what are the best cool microphones out there for us. It's like there's a many, many things that go into that. In addition, like how do you create a presentation so that you can, engage a new audience into Bitcoin, right? That's a huge thing when we're out there in our own unique avenues of orange pilling people and being that front line. Like you said, what works for one audience is not going to work for this audience. And so to sit and think there's some cookie cutter way to um, talk about freedom and sovereignty and this new, technology of sound money, is we have to understand, what are we shying at, and what, our audience needs, and how to match those things up and be the bridge, of understanding and helping that transformation come through. So you guys can go to bitcoinforpeace.org, and sign up if you want to be a presenter. I haven't opened it up yet for just the general public to attend, but if you want to present, you guys can go and there's an application. So we're just getting this started. It's all volunteer. It's going to be value for value. And Bitcoin for Peace is going to turn into a nonprofit here so that we can start funding creators to get their messages out there into the different audiences that are underserved, that may not have big marketing budgets, right? Like people who are in domestic violence situations those shelters don't have big budgets to go pay for stuff. But so if we can come together as a community and support people who are out in these different fields, I think we're going to have another layer and level of adoption that's very, very important and very meaningful. And so I'm excited for you to participate, beautiful Vivian. I hope you're going to be there. you're
Of
help
course,
you're
of course.
you're you're in the group, so
I'm super looking forward to it, and I have to say, I really appreciate what you do in the space, Val. It's long overdue for the Bitcoin community to have some bubbly energy, and to really bring more positivity into the world and into the space where our world it's super chaotic right now. It's almost depressing, and there's
Yeah,
so much things going on. There's never a dull day in the space. With the dynamic of it is what I really love, but at the same time it can be a little bit exhausting at times, and sometimes I
yeah,
just want to sit back and listen to a cheerful conversation, maybe just like this one, to really soak in the positivity And there's so much hope in Bitcoin, and I want to just soak in it. And I think your content and your presence and your work in Bitcoin really brings that energy into the Bitcoin space and is much, much needed. So thank you for everything that you've contributed to the space and continue to contribute. And I'm super looking forward to the Creator Summit. I'll definitely be there. And
Yay.
I encourage everyone to join. Either you're a creator yourself already, or you're thinking about creating content for the
Exactly.
space, or in any other industries, to be honest. And or you're someone who want to be able to orange pill your community better, then look no further. This is going to be a great opportunity for all of us to hang out and learn from each other.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words, and I feel the same for you, Vivian. I'm like so delighted that you and I are rocking this together, and we're gonna be buddies now. And I'm like, yay, another soul sister in Bitcoin. It's so cool, and I think too, just people who are listening to, if even if you're not a Bitcoiner yet, I mean, I think everyone will be eventually, but that this is the point. Like, come together and learn like how Bitcoin can help you as a creator. You don't have to be a Bitcoiner yet to come and learn from everybody, because there's no one right way to do it. We're just going to all share best practices, learn from each other, test some stuff out, try to poke holes in things, see what's working, what's not, and keep trying to move the needle forward on this experience and this experiment called life, called Bitcoin, and called being an artist too. So yay. So where can everybody find you, Viv?
All right. So I guess the best way to find me would be on Twitter, and I'm at btcviv. I am shadow banned though, so you have to directly go to the profile and poke around a little bit to find me. The podcast Twitter is Life with Bitcoin. It's Life W Bitcoin. That's the Twitter handle. I am on YouTube as well, Life with Bitcoin podcast, and then looking forward to sharing more content with you. If you ever tune into the show, feel free to send me a message. It's always great to hear from everyone.
Yay. Awesome. Make sure you guys go follow Vivian, and definitely subscribe on all the channels. I love all the clips that you're making, all the interviews that you do. You've gotten some great, great people on the show. I can't wait to keep diving more into these interviews, because they're meaningful, and you talk a lot about the mission and everything with everybody. So it's very aligned with how I love to learn and understand and get closer to people in this place, and closer to love. And you are a big ball of love, and I love you, and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so
And I'm
much.
excited to keep rocking. And everybody, make sure you follow Viv and go to bitcoinforpeace.org. And if you're interested in signing up for the Creator Summit, please do so. And other than that, I wish you guys the best day of your whole lives, because it's the only one you get, right? Peace, love, and aloha. And thanks again, Vivian. I will chat with everybody soon.